Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Robinson. I'm the Chief Scientist for the International Space Station at NASA in Houston. And I began my relationship with NASA as a space station researcher. I actually published the first peer-reviewed publication that came from the space station at the beginning of its assembly. And I came to the office of the Chief Scientist at the time, who was Don Thomas, in 2004. I became Chief Scientist myself in 2007, and I've been doing that role ever since. The first lesson I'd like to talk about is not having the science organization peak too soon. So, what happened on the space station is that we originally set up our science organization, which was at that time called the Office of Biological and Physical Research, and it was going to be the NSF of space. And we set that up based on the original space station assembly schedule so that it really had peaked in about 2003, 2004 at a budget of about $800 million. It had brought in a large research community, and that community was sitting with experiments and hardware waiting, and the space station wasn't ready. It wasn't built. And so then after the Columbia accident, when we rescoped the shuttle program, decided it needed to retire, we lost that budget, and we had to cut about 3/4 of those investigators out of the program. And there were people with postdocs ready to do research that got a letter 2 weeks before the funding went away. So it was devastating to our scientific community. It affected the community's view of human spaceflight as a whole, and it set our research back by a decade. So what's happened since that time is Congress has looked at the platform and the laboratory and the opportunity, and they've said, the U.S. government isn't going to fund all the research that you could do on the space station, and they designated the space station as a national laboratory, which meant that other government agencies and private sector users, commercial companies, could come in and access it without paying for transportation or without paying for the services on board. They could just come use it if they could bring their own side of the funding. And with that designation, we've been rebuilding the community, both through targeted NASA funding and through managing and developing ISS as a national laboratory. Just today, we're still recovering all of those scientific communities and the threads of research that they were pursuing so that we can have full utilization on board the space station. I think the lesson is that although you have to start research funding along with assembly to plan for the right facilities and some of the really long lead time engineering development, you want to also grow that community in a way that's in sync with the development cycle of the space station, and you may need to be clever about the way you rephase that. You really want your scientific community that's going to be your core users to become really active, say about 2 years before the flight opportunities start, so that they have time to get everything built on the ground. Of course, they've already had inputs into the facilities earlier than that, and then your big grant funding starts reverberating through in the selection of research that will be on the platform a couple years later.